This
with management.
conference will now be
Okay.
recorded.
Right, as of now, we discussed about the required Linux commands. Right, in one class, we discussed 50 plus Linux commands. Right, so you know how to create a AWS account, and you know how to create the server in AWS. Okay, so let's start the yes. We discussed this Linux 50 plus commands. Right, so so you can use this. You can collect the material from the management. Okay, and and let's start today's session. Okay, we can. Yes, Naresh, could you please everyone confirm you are able to see the notepad? Could you please confirm our chart? Okay, yeah, okay. Yes, Naresh, maybe your side issue. Please re-log in. You can see the yeah screen will come. Okay, yeah. So let's start the tool DevOps tool called Docker. Okay, we can start the Docker tool from today onwards. Okay, so yeah, please collect the Linux 50 commands and the line AWS, how to create a AWS account material. Okay, so let me connect to the AWS account. So I would like to connect to the aws.amazon.com. Okay, and you can sign into the console, and you can use EC2. Okay, you can connect to the EC2 instances. Yes. So yeah, there are different regions, right? So let me connect to the EC2 instances, right? So there are no servers, right? Running servers currently in in my AWS account, all are terminated. So let me create one server and I will install Docker. So before that, let's understand. So what is Docker? So Docker is a containerization. Containerization. So using Docker, you can create microservices. Okay. For example, so you have, right, your manager is asking you to install 4 applications. So what you will do? You will install it in 4 servers, right? So managing 4 servers is very tough every time connecting to it and running some checking the applications, right? So instead of doing, you can create only one server, okay, and within that you can run small micro applications using Docker, okay. So actually, the before the Docker, how the organizations are there and how it will be now, okay. So let's understand that, okay. So before Docker, so we have, for example, this is your laptop. So on top of your laptop, your Windows OS is running, right? So if you want to install Linux operating system, what you will do? So no need to uninstall Windows. So on top of your Windows, you can run multiple other servers using hypervisor. This is some old process. This is old process. This is hypervisor. Okay, this is hypervisor. So on top of the hypervisor, you will install hypervisor is a software, for example, VMware, uh, like Oracle VirtualBox. These are all are hypervisor softwares. On top of the hypervisor, you can install the small microservices. This is one small microservice. This is another small microservice. It can be a Windows one, or it can be a Linux one. It can be a Linux one, right? So you can on top of that you can have some you can connect to the servers. You can install the small applications, right? You can install. For example, your laptop is 16 GB RAM. You can segregate 4 GB for this server and 4 GB for this server, right? Like you can use. So right? So you have the Windows, right? On top of the Windows you will install some Oracle VirtualBox or VMware, and on top of that you will install Windows or Linux. Okay, so like you will do. Okay, so but now the what is the issue with this? So the system may hang sometime, and for installing this Windows server or Linux server it will take some 3 to 4 hours. So you need to have a CD file, and you have to upload that CD file. Okay, for example, this is Windows CD file. Okay, you will download and keep it in your Windows operating system. From that CD file you will create these virtual machines. We can call these are virtual machines, and I will call this Windows is a host operating system, and remaining all are guest operating system. These three are guest operating system, guest OS. So this is traditional approach. It may hang sometime, okay, and creating the guest operating system will take longer time. All right. So coming to this Docker, so same. Consider this is your OS laptop, right? So consider this is your Windows. Okay. So here we are installing hypervisor, but coming to Docker, you can install some Docker engine. So consider this is some Docker engine. So this is Docker engine. So on top of the Docker engine, right? How we are creating the guest operating system? We can create some containers. So for creating the container, you need some OS file, right? So we are saying those OS files are images. So consider. So these are the images. So how we have AWS AMI OS file. Similarly, this is a image, Docker image. This is another Docker image. This is another Docker image. Okay. So using the Docker image, you can create n number of containers. So which are very lightweight. So we are calling these are guest OS, and these are containers. So you can create a container within 2 to 3 minutes. The Windows guest OS, I mean the virtual machines, these servers, it will take some 2 hours, 3 hours each one, but these containers will take very less time. These are containers, isolated containers. These are images, and this is your Docker engine. Okay, like that. So just note down a diagram. Okay, so we have this. So I will share. Right, so just note down, this is traditional approach. This is your server laptop. On top of the laptop you have host operating system. On top of that you have hypervisor installed. On top of that you have guest operating systems. Okay, so you have applications. Okay, just note down this diagram. Note down the diagram. So hypervisor is a software you can run multiple VMs. Okay, Docker engine is a software to maintain or run multiple containers. Okay, so let's create one Linux server. In that we can install the Docker. Okay, so you can use yeah Docker server. You can provide the name for the server is Docker server, right? And I would like to use Amazon Linux. Okay, and T2.micro. So I would like to use 1 GB RAM, and I already have the key pair. I want to use the existing key pair. And so Docker is not running on a specific port. Okay, you don't need to open any specific port. Let's run it. Okay, so your Docker server is in pending. Let's wait. It will come to the running state. Right, it's come to the running. Let's connect to the server. Click on the server and click on connect, right? And copy this example command, and your PEM file is under downloads, my PEM file, Docker PEM file. So let me open the git bash, right click and open git bash. Okay, and so you can use SSH hyphen I, right? The SSH secure shell mechanism. I means identity. I am using docker.pem file. I'm connecting as a EC2 hyphen user. This is the complete server DNS. Okay, so let's connect. Yes, right? Just make it as a root user, sudo su, right? So current host name is your IP, I mean your DNS. I would like to change the host name to doc for easy understand. Let's exit and reconnect. Now the host name is changed to Docker, right? So let's install the Docker. So you can use yum install docker hyphen. Okay. So you can use yum install docker hyphen, or you can use yum install docker to install the Docker. So I'm installing Docker 20.10 version. Okay. So you can say, and so you can see, so this is your Docker is installed. How to confirm? You can use Docker hyphen hyphen version. So 20.10th version is installed. So you run which command? Yum install Docker, which will install the Docker. And to confirm the version, you can see Docker hyphen hyphen version. So in the interviews, you will get a question, which version of Docker you are using? Which version of Docker you are using? You can mention the version name from so 20.10 you are using. Okay. So anyway, so as what I said, you are downloading some images. From the download, from that images, you are creating a containers, right? So let's see that. So, but where all these images are there? So the images are there in Docker Hub. So Docker Hub. So you can see this is one of the Docker hub.docker.com. So here you can see images. Okay. Here you can search for, if you want, for example, CentOS image or Red Hat image, you can check for it, right? There is a CentOS image, right? So you can see different versions using tag. Here tag is nothing but version. Okay, you can see. So CentOS 7.9 is there, CentOS 7 is there. Okay, and so if you want to see currently any server, any images in your system, you can use Docker images. So Docker images is a command to see list of images in your system. So currently you are not connected to your Docker. Why? Because so you install Docker, but you didn't started it. So how to start? You can use systemctl start Docker. Now you start. If you see the status now, systemctl status Docker, right? Status is active and up and running, right? So now let's see the images now. So currently you don't have any images in your system. Okay. So right, so Docker images, you have the repository, you have the tag, and you have the image ID, right? So you haven't created anything, you haven't created any size, right? So you download an image. So for example, if you want this Docker 7.9 image, you can copy this command and you can run Docker pull. CentOS is a repository, and that means collection of uh, different versions of CentOS. CentOS is one repository, and there are different versions. You can mention the version name here. If you want 7.9, you can mention Docker pull CentOS CentOS 7.9. So if you see, it is downloading, pulling the things. You see, pulling that image, right? Now, if you see Docker images, this is the repository name CentOS, and the version is CentOS 7.9, and this is the ID, image ID. Some 13 months ago, this CentOS 7.9 is created, and size is 204 MB. So for example, if you want to, if you mention Docker pull CentOS, what will happen? If you didn't mention any version, here you mentioned 7.9 version, it downloaded 7.9. If you directly pulled Docker pull CentOS, it is looking for a latest version tag. If here latest is there, right? So if you didn't mention anything, it will take the latest version tag. Okay. So right. So just note down. So you can use Docker pull is a command to download it. So now if you see Docker images, there are two images. Okay. For example, if you don't want this image, if you want to save the size, you can use Docker RMI is a command. Remove image and the image ID. You can now if you see Docker images, the image right. So let me do one thing. I want to create a container now. Okay. I want to uh, create this CentOS container. So you can use Docker run is a command. You can provide your from which image you want to create Docker run -it. That means I want to directly connect to the container after creation. Okay, Docker run -it and the image ID. Okay, you can provide the image ID. Okay, and you can provide the shell. I want to connect to the shell as a command, right? So yeah, you're using the wrong image ID. Let's provide this image ID, CentOS. Docker run -it image ID /bin, right? Now you are directly part of the container. This is container, this is your Docker server, right? So let me, let me show you, let me exit from this container. Okay, now we are part of the Docker. Now let's see, let's list the containers. So you can use Docker PS icon. You can see your container is created. This is the container ID. Image is which from which image it is created, and you provided one command, and which is created 23 seconds ago, and state is 0 seconds ago. It is stopped. It is stopped. It is in stopped state. You didn't expose any port, and this is the random name provided to your container by Docker engine. So Docker ps -a is a command. And if you run the same command again, it will create another container with another random name. Now you're in another container. Let's exit from here. Now if you see Docker ps-a, another container is created, right? With Shaha. Some other random name is created, right? So let me start the container. You can use Docker start to create, to start the container, right? Now if you see Docker ps-a, so this container is up and running, right? Just note down, we have Docker info to see running images and running containers. To install the Docker, you can use install Docker. To start the Docker, you can use systemctl start Docker, right? So to see the status, you can use systemctl status Docker. So Docker info is a command, okay? And if you want to download any image, you can use Docker pull image ID, and you can use Docker, okay? So RMI command and image ID to remove the image. And if you want to start a container, you can use Docker run -it means interactive session with image, and the command is bin bash. If you want to start a container, you can use Docker start container ID. If you want to stop a container, you can use Docker stop container ID. If you want to remove any container, for example, I don't want this image, I don't want this container, you can use Docker rm container ID. Now if you see, there is only one container which is up and run, right? So you can use Docker rm container ID. So just note down these commands, we can go further, right? So Docker -version to see the version, right? Docker -version, just note down. So we ran that. So now I want to provide, I don't want to use this customized name. I want to provide my name, okay, for the content. So you can use Docker. For example, if you want Java image, okay, so you can directly create a container from a Java image. So without download also. So for example, I don't have any Java image in my system. Okay, I want to run Docker run. Okay, -it. Okay, you can provide your random name. For example, say Raju Java server. Okay, and I want to use the Java. Okay, and I want to use the shell /bin/bash. So currently Java image is not there. It is downloading locally. Okay, so yeah, it is unable to found that the latest version Java. Okay, for example, Red Hat, for example, or yeah, some Ubuntu. It will check for the latest Ubuntu. Yeah, it's there. That's what is downloading and creating a container. So now you're part of the container. If you see this is your container, not your Docker server, right? Let's exit from here. Now if you see Docker images, Ubuntu is downloaded. Earlier there is only CentOS. So, and if you see the containers, Docker ps-a, there is Raju Java, right? So with this name, it is created, right? So for example, if you rerun with the same, if you want to assign the same name for the containers, what is the error you're getting? Raju Java is already used by container. Right? Just note down this command. So how to provide name? Okay. Right. So yeah, someone is asking out. So yes, if you want to connect to the shell, it is mandatory. If you want to directly connect, so you can, for example, I want to create Jenkins. I want to create a Jenkins container from my Docker. Okay. So for example, if right, so this is your Docker server. Within the Docker, you install some Jenkins container, right? So Jenkins is running on which port? Can anyone say that? Our chart? Do you know on which port Jenkins is running? Okay. Yeah, Jenkins is running on port called 8080. Okay, so Jenkins is running on 8080. In your system IP is Docker server IP is this one, right? So this is your Docker server IP, but and the container also. So container also will have, one second. Hello. Yeah. So yeah, sorry for that. So the Docker is running on 8080 port and your server IP is this one. So you and container also will have some IPs. For example, this is one of the container which is currently running, right? So let me connect to this server. For example, uh, Docker exec is a command to connect to a container. So you can connect with interactive session container ID. So I want to connect with the shell. Now, if you see IP address if config, are you seeing any IP? Not. So you need to install some things. So you need to install few things to, okay, to get the IP address to work this IP config command. You need to install some networking tools. So IP config is a networking tool, right? Networking command. So install net tools. You are getting error because some issue in the repositories. Let's fix this using these commands. You can use these commands to fix it. Okay, just run these three commands. So our I'm sharing our chart. Okay, you are going to this repository folder using cd command, and you are using some streamline editors to update the repository URLs. So now if you run install net tools, you can install this. You can install, right? So the net tools are installed. Okay, so it is complete. So now if you see if config, you can see the IP address. So this is your container IP. Okay, and this is your Docker server IP. Okay, so if you install Jenkins in the container, you can access only through the container IP, not with this Docker server IP, right? But I want that one to work. I can access only with the container, right? You can't access the container IP outside. So to do that, you can directly install. You can expose the port numbers. So let's run this command. Okay. So you can, for example, I want to install Docker directly. You can use Docker. I want to install Jenkins now. Docker run. I want to create a container. Okay. I want to expose the 8080 port to the host level and container level. And I want to provide the name for my Jenkins server, which is my Jenkins master. And I want to create as a background using the image Jenkins. Jenkins is a repository. Jenkins is a image, which is there in the which is there in the Docker Hub. So I'm exposing this. This is host port. That means Docker server port. This is guest port. That means your container, right? So DOCK. So you're part of the container. Just exit from that. Now you're in Docker server. Just run this command. So Jenkins image is not there. It is pulling that. It is downloading that. So after that, it is now if you see Docker images, The Jenkins image is downloaded, and let's see the containers. Docker ps -a, right? Your Jenkins server is container is created. So you can use Docker ps also. So Docker ps-a will display all the containers. Docker ps will display only up and running containers. Okay, these two are up and running. That's why you can see under Docker ps, right? So Docker ps-a for all the containers. Docker ps is for only running containers, right? So I created this Docker Jenkins container using port exposure 8080. So this is host port, right? This is container level. So host level, I am exposing the 8080 port for my container. So what I am doing simply, this is host port, this is container port. So whatever the application running in the container, which will be forwarded to your host. So now if you use your system IP address with 8080 port, you can see the Jenkins. Anyway, let's go to the security. Let's open the 8080. So how to open? You can click on edit inbound rules. There is only 22 port. Click on add rule. Okay, custom TCP it is a 8080. I want to access my Jenkins from anywhere. Let's save. So now if you see, just refresh, enter. You can see Jenkins in your host type. Actually, you didn't install anything in your Docker server like Jenkins, but right. So, but it is running in your container. So let's see this. So this is the password file for Jenkins. Currently, you are in Docker server. Is there anything? No such file because you're in your Docker server. Let's connect to the container. So how to connect? Can anyone? Docker exec -it. This is your container ID, right? /bin/bash. Now you're in container. Now see the now see that file in which let's see the file. Just take the password, right? You can see this is your password, right? So you can provide your admin password here and click on continue. You can install suggested plugins. Right. Right. Still the Jenkins is downloading. Okay, let's wait. Take some time. Let's wait. So it will take some time, right? If you want to expose any port, you can expose with the port number, right? So let's go. So this is your container, just exit, right? So there are two ways to connect to your container. So you can use Docker exec and Docker exec to connect to your container. Right? So this is your container ID -it/binbash. Okay, so we can use binbash and the container ID. Okay, so you can do like that. So let's continue. And there is another method is Docker attach. So what is Docker attach? So we can discuss that, okay, later in coming classes. So meanwhile, we can see, yeah, it will take some time. So let's wait. So meanwhile, we can see this security. So what is security group? Security group is nothing but security for your content. So for example, so for your EC2 instance. For example, this is your EC2 instance, right? So you're opening, for example, right, inbound rule called 22 is by default. Later we added this 8080, but default is 22 is open. So this is your EC2 instance. The 22 port is open, SSH port. Okay, this is 22 port open. So if you want to connect to any server, if it is Windows, you need to open 3389. If it is Linux, you need to open SSH 22 port. Am I correct? Right. So inbound ports are incoming to the EC2 instance. That means connecting to your server. So incoming or inbound is same. And from the server, if you want to connect outside, please mute. Someone is unmuted. So yeah. So if you want to connect from if you want to connect from EC2 instance to outside of any server, for example, SBA server, I want to purchase some goods and some products. So you need to connect to the SBA server and we're checking that credit card details are correct or not, right? So you need to open some outbound rule for connecting outside servers from your EC2 instance, right, to outside server. This is your other server, okay, and this is your okay, okay, incoming to the EC2 instance. This is outgoing to the EC2 instance. Okay, so if you want to see, I mean, if you want to edit any ports, if you want to add any ports, you can click on edit inbound rule. Okay, so for example, I install Jenkins, right? Jenkins is running on 8080 port. You need to connect to it. So you need to open inbound rule. So you can see outbound rule here. So outbound rule, why it mentioned all the ports are open? We don't know when, in which port SBI is running, right? Or in which port the application server, outside servers are running. So you're using outbound rules. So if you want to edit any inbound rule, you can click on edit inbound rules and you can update that. So and your container is running, right? Your container is running here, right? So with one IP address. So I want to, for example, right? So it is running with this IP. So for container application is running on 8080. So if you want to expose it, you can use this 8080 host and -p for port exposed, -d for daemon running background. Okay. So I will share these commands. So please practice these commands. So before coming to the tomorrow session, so I shared our chart. So please note it down. Okay. So do you have any doubts up to this? Any doubts? Okay. I shared our chart. Please note down those commands, and also you can collect the material from management. Okay, Linux commands and the remaining things. Okay, and don't forget to stop your server. So no issues. It's still downloading. Leave it. So don't forget to stop your server. I will terminate it directly. I don't want it. Okay, I will create later another one. So let's continue. Okay. Any doubts before closing this session? I know some lot of commands we discussed, so which are new to you. Just do practice. We can have tomorrow onwards some 1 hour classes. Okay. So just do practice. We'll connect tomorrow. So these are all security groups. You can find out from the dashboard. Okay, guys. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. Okay. I hope everyone is good. Please create a AWS account and do this practice. Okay. So thank you, guys.